Hello and welcome. This is Business Edge right here on News Central, and I am Joe Hanson. Today we'll be taking a look at so many stories concerning business and, more importantly, focusing on Africa. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take you through the stories. Welcome back to Business Edge on News Central. Let's take a look at our first story concerning food insecurity in Africa. The Food and Agriculture Organization states that approximately 27.4% of the population in Africa has been classified as being severely food insecure in 2016. This is almost 4 times as high as any other region of the world. Low-cost invasions have become a menace in sub-Saharan Africa. One of the most troubling effects of the locust swarms is their consumption of green vegetation, in particular crops within agricultural regions and pastoral communities. In a single day, a swarm of locusts that covers 1 square kilometer can consume more food than 35,000 people would in the same time frame. In a region already affected by food insecurity, the locust outbreak only exacerbates the problem and could potentially lead to 5 million people in Africa facing starvation. Also, drought as a result of the El Nino weather phenomenon had ravaged parts of East and Southern Africa. War, conflict and civil disturbances also contributed to the worsening food insecurity in Africa. Insurgency has become a bane in many parts of the continent, irrespective of the geographical location, but with the same consequence. Adding to this, International Monetary Fund has projected a deep coronavirus-induced global recession, which threatens a nearly 4% drop in world GDP and could drag the GDP of African economies into a fall of about 1.4%, with smaller economies facing a contraction of up to 7.8%. Joining me here in the studio, we have a News Central researcher who is here to talk more on this. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's take a look at the story right now. What is the state of food security, if you would say, in the continent?
Okay, so let's start globally by saying that due to advancement and improvement in technology of agriculture, probably man's oldest means of survival, we can say clearly that there's enough food to go around in the world. However, because of five issues around food security, about accessibility, affordability, availability, and a few more others, people are unable to, to have sufficient food to sustain them through their, through their sustenance. Now, in Africa particularly, you have 1 in 4 persons at the risk of being food insecure or at the risk of going hungry. What is happening is a combination. We have a crisis in a crisis. We have COVID-19, which will not allow people to run around or sell products as at when or where they need to do that. People are unable to go to their farms because of insecurity. You have, insurgents and all of that, cutting off a large sort of people from access to farmlands. You have also the issue of unstable weather conditions, natural disasters, flood in parts of Sudan, South Sudan, Egypt, virtually a lot of countries in Africa. So essentially, some of these factors, have precipitated reasons for which people are unable to get access to food or access to products that will keep them going.
All right, so let me ask again, what areas would you say have been adversely affected?
Okay, so there are lots of areas affected. One, you have the arid regions in Africa, especially the Sahara Belt, where a lot of lands have been aridized, affected by weather conditions for which they are no longer usable for farming. You also have a lot of regions, swats in East Africa, where flooding has washed off half of farmlands, where low-cost invasion has consumed more than enough for them to replenish and even run an agricultural circle around the product. So you have East Africa, you have the Central Africa, you have parts of West Africa, and even Southern Africa. So virtually nearly every part of Africa is affected, and we are really battling to see how we can cushion all of these effects.
All right, so what are some of the challenges that have put the continent at risk concerning food insecurity?
Okay, the most crucial or the most critical is access to water. So you see that a lot of Africans consume products like crops like rice, rely on sugar cane. These crops need heavy supply of water. Now, if you talk about water in isolation without talking about irrigation that runs all year round, it means that while you can talk about some crops that are seasonal, we should have gotten beyond that level where you need to farm your products, wait for some time for rain, and then begin to farm again. Irrigations will ordinarily have ensured that products can be farmed all year round, and so these are some of the most critical issues. Another one is about knowledge. So you have most people running their farming in the subsistence method. You need to farm more to reach out to reach more people. So when we say that there are more people in farming, why is it also a problem that people have access to food? The question is, most of the time, some of these products that have been farmed go to waste. You're unable to get it across to those who actually need them, because those who need them do not even know that you have them. So it's an issue around information. It's an issue around access to the food product itself. It's a whole lot. Water, access to water especially.
Interesting. All right, so I need to ask this question as well. Locust invasion has had an adverse effect on food production in the continent, if you take a look at that, and also, just as we saw in the story, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. But what is the extent of the damage or the effect it had when it comes to food production?
So a lot happened during the invasion. You have, while the locust invasion was on, you still have some parts of East Africa being flooded. What it means is that at the time when there need to be harvest, that was when flooding and other elements of the weather affected supply, affected movement of harvest of crops and even the income of farmers, because without you harvesting your crops, you probably cannot buy other products you need for survival. So this has affected exports, imports, and those who countries who have an understanding, for exports or imports, are unable to meet up with local demands, are unable to meet up with export demands. So the impact is an all-round effect on both food security, food safety, nutrition, and even exports. What countries get in terms of export of these cash crops.
Interesting. All right, so what have been put in place? What are the things that have been put in place? What are the measures that have been put in place to ensure that that can cushion the effects that this has had in affected areas as well?
So you have government, intergovernment collaboration. You have UN Food Agricultural Organization looking to offer better seeds to farmers, to also supply grains to especially affected communities where they are in danger of hunger and starvation if those supplies are not done. So there's a recent call for funding for a few African countries which are in dire straits, who need more of these help in terms of supply of food crops and other means of keeping them going while the issue of their farms, their farmlands, and the the locust invasion is being sorted out. There's spraying of chemicals around areas where the invasion is most rife. Governments are able to fly helicopters around regions, especially Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, for example, between last year and this year, where they are able to, solve this problem to a large extent.
All right. You're still watching Business Edge. We'll still take a look at many more questions. But first, let's go for a break. And when we return, we'll continue with the question. Welcome back to Business Edge on News Central TV. And right before the break, we were looking at food insecurity in sub-Saharan Africa. And we still have News Central researcher Abdulateef Ahmed, who's still here with me. And we are looking at the persistence and why it is still there. The question really is, what are some of the possible reasons why food insecurity is still a topic today?
So people need to live, people need to feed to be able to live and to be able to work. But when you look at the fact that at least about 27% of young people above the age of 15 are unable to have access to quality nutritive food. What it means is that mothers will end up unable to nurture children who are going to be sound in body and mind, enough to be able to access information or education they need to drive the economies or the society. So you have unnecessary malnutrition on one hand, impact on the economy because you do not have sound minds to drive the economy. You also have issue of insecurity because those who are unable to access, to run the economy or access jobs, fall back to the devil's tools, and then they begin to foment trouble in the society. So it's an issue that it's a global issue, and it's an issue of serious concern to Africa, and we need to do something urgent about it. For some countries, that is being done, but there's need for us to do enough. If you look at the crisis, for example, in Chad, for example, over 80% of the source of livelihood of an entire country has been cut off by something they had no control over, the drying of the lake itself. So fishermen, people who have farmlands around that region are unable to do that. If you look at the damming of the GRG dam project of Ethiopia, for example, the fact that the dam is coming up for electricity is going to affect the lives and sustenance of people. Over 35% of people living, on that what do you call it, the River Nile in Egypt. So it's a whole lot. People are changing their choices in terms of food. So why, for example, are people going to eat more rice than traditionally corn? Why are people moving from corn to rice? So, but in the name of eating more or feeding on more rice, we still have the need for corn or maize production to meet up demand for production of broilers, for example, and other poultry needs. So while people will not eat as much corn as they used to eat 50 years ago, there is need for more production of corn, now because of the demand and the choices that people make in terms of, food choices. All right.
Let's look at this question clearly. Should farmers, or rather countries, expect another wave? And now that we're seeing a lot of food insecurity, should farmers and countries expect another wave of this?
Yes, they should. And the reason is because the weather is getting more unstable. We recently, about a few days ago, we had Gati hitting Somalia.
Sure.
We have flooding in Sudan, South Sudan,
Absolutely.
And all of that. So the weather is that part we are unable to control. We do not have any control over the weather. But what we have control over are the systems, the techniques, which we can teach farmers. If governments are able to provide, for example, more irrigation access, so say in Kenya you have, say, 5 million to 10 million persons able to access an all year round irrigation system, that will do a lot to food insecurity. In Ethiopia, for example, there is the use of SMS on a database for farmers. So farmers know what products are in most demand in a certain period of time. They know, for example, the type of soil they have, and they have access to where they can get high yield seeds, and all of these will, in the long run, impact positively, the quality of food products. So it depends on how we're able to look at these things holistically, considering the fact that we have no control over certain elements that we need to in order to be food secure. What we need is to put our hands and head together and see how we can improve those aspects where we have control over technology. We can reduce wastage, for example, because you have over 35% of what is being cultivated as tomatoes in Nigeria, for example, goes to waste on an annual basis. But there are those who need these products, all the time. And it means that unless you're able to preserve them, the waste will cost us more, and it will make us more food insecure.
Interesting. So right before I let you go, Abdulateef, I'm going to ask you one more question. So what is the future? What is the future of food security in Africa?
So food insecurity gives us a window or a gulf for us to fill. You have the need for us in Nigeria, for example, to import palm oil worth $500 million annually. For those who are smart enough, that is an area where you could invest and ensure that you're able to meet up part of that demand. But the future is in vertical farming, where you do not need to rely on the soil, for example, to be able to farm consistently all year round. Aquaponics and all of that, is one area a lot of people are looking into. You're also looking at the revolution that mobile phones will be able to do. So if you have access to mobile telephony in rural communities, if you have schools on farms, instead of saying, okay, your parents who have to farm, have their children, have to worry about how they move their children from farmlands to schools, there could be schools around farming communities where it eases the stress, and they only go to school and then return back to their homes. It makes a lot of things easy for the survival and the future of food security in Africa.
I'm sure we could go on and on and on, but I want to thank you so much for being here with us on Business Edge.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Business Edge, News Central analyst, and of course you could say researcher, Abdulateef Ahmed, who has joined us to break it down concerning food insecurity in Africa. Next, let's take a look at NC4 to watch. Nigerian president to launch auto gas scheme December 1. President Muhammadu Buhari will on December the 1st launch the auto gas scheme in Abuja. The Nigerian government moves to create alternative fuel for automobiles and other prime movers in Nigeria. Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim, Chairman National Gas Expansion Program, made the announcement at a meeting with media stakeholders over the weekend in Lagos. Ibrahim said the autogas scheme and deepening domestic utilization of liquefied petroleum gas would create about 12.5 million direct and indirect jobs for Nigerians. Let's take a look at number 2. Rwanda cancels plan to increase Rwanda Air fleet. Rwanda has disclosed that it is putting on hold the acquisition of new airplanes for its national carrier Rwanda Air, mainly due to the impact of COVID-19 on businesses. The additional planes were to enable Rwanda Air serve the increasingly open skies through the bilateral air services agreement. Due to the global pandemic, Rwanda Air was forced to suspend operations following the lockdown in March and only resumed operations in August, when the country started a gradual reopening of the economy. And at number 3, things are looking up for oil, but OPEC can't uncross its fingers just yet. Oil ministers are meeting. And when oil ministers from the world's largest fossil fuel nations meet via webcam this week to make decisions about the global oil market in 2021, they could be forgiven for indulging in a little early festive cheer. Oil prices have more than doubled since tumbling below $20 a barrel and hitting 21-year lows during Black April, when COVID restrictions brought major economies to their knees and caused what is thought to have been the worst month in the history of the oil industry. The mood within the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, may be more buoyant, still following a rally of almost a third in the past month alone, as vaccine news offered the first hopes of a true recovery for the global economy. The price of a barrel of Brent crude is currently about $48, while the US oil price is about $45 a barrel. Taking a look at number 4, Voice to Code, Serenade gets $2.1 million in seed round. Artificial intelligence-powered voice output conversation into lines of code came due to the need of one of its founders, Matt Vethoff. And now Serenade has secured a $2.1 million seed investment led by Amplify Partners and Neo. While it was at it, the startup also announced the first commercial version of the product, Serenade Pro. The other co-founder, Tommy McWilliams, says that while there are a bunch of generalized speech-to-text engines out there, they hadn't been able to find anything that was tuned specifically for the requirements of someone entering code. And that does it for our NC4 to watch. It has been a good show. Thanks for staying with us, and thank you so much for staying with me. For more information on business stories, don't forget to follow us on all socials, as you can find right there on the screen. Until we come again tomorrow, do well to join us. I'm Joe Hanson.